Have you ever woken up from a dream that felt so vivid, so charged with emotion, that it haunted you for the rest of the day? A mysterious figure standing at the edge of a dark forest, a house with secret rooms you never knew existed, an unknown person offering you an object you could not quite recognize. Normally, we brush these experiences aside. We tell ourselves it was just brain noise, just random neurons firing while we slept. But what if those figures in your dreams were not random at all? What if they were living psychological realities, waiting for you to step back into the room and ask them why they are there? Most of us live under a comfortable illusion. We believe that who we are is simply the conscious mind, the voice in our head that plans the day, pays the bills, and decides what to eat for lunch. We treat our minds like a single unified country ruled by one president. But if you pay close attention to your daily life, you quickly realize this is not true. Part of you wants to work hard on your goals, while another part sabotages your effort and scrolls on your phone for hours. Part of you wants to stay calm, while another part erupts in sudden, uncontrollable anger over a minor inconvenience. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, understood that the human psyche is not a single monologue. It is a crowded room. It is a complex ecosystem of distinct autonomous personalities, inner archetypes, repressed emotions, and forgotten memories. And for most of our lives, these hidden parts of ourselves communicate with us only through indirect means. They speak through mysterious dreams, unexplained anxiety, sudden mood swings, or creative blocks. They are trying to get your attention. But because we do not know how to listen, they are forced to scream. This brings us to one of Jung's most powerful, revolutionary, and deeply misunderstood psychological techniques. It is called active imagination. It is the art of talking to your dreams while you are wide awake. It is a structured, intentional way to cross the bridge between your conscious ego and the vast ocean of your unconscious mind. Active imagination is not daydreaming. It is not passive fantasy where you control the story. And it is not standard meditation where you attempt to clear your mind of all thoughts. It is an active, living dialogue with the real entities that dwell inside your inner world. To understand where this technique came from, we have to go back to a critical turning point in Carl Jung's own life. Around the year 1913, Jung suffered a massive personal and psychological crisis. He had just broken his personal and professional relationship with Sigmund Freud, a rupture that left him isolated from the scientific community. At the same time, Jung began experiencing overwhelming visions and intense inner turmoil. He felt as though he was on the verge of a complete psychological breakdown. He faced a choice. He could fight these terrifying inner images and try to suppress them, or he could turn around, stand his ground, and face them directly. Jung chose to face them. Every evening, after finishing his work with patients, he sat down in his study, lowered his conscious defenses, and intentionally allowed himself to plunge into his own unconscious. He did not try to direct the stream of imagination. Instead, he observed the images that emerged, gave them space to speak, and began writing down everything they said. Out of this intense, harrowing period came the famous Red Book, a manuscript filled with striking artwork and dramatic dialogues between Jung and figures from his inner world. During these sessions, Jung met an old man named Elijah and a blind woman named Salome, accompanied by a black serpent. Later, Elijah evolved into a figure Jung named Philemon, a wise, winged old man who spoke with an authority that Jung realized did not belong to his own conscious intellect. Jung wrote that Philemon taught him a crucial lesson about the human mind. Philemon showed him that there are things in the mind which Carl Jung himself did not produce, but which produced themselves and had their own life. Jung realized he was not the sole master of his inner house. When you practice active imagination, you are adopting this exact same discovery. You are accepting that the figures, emotions, and symbols inside your mind have their own psychological reality. They are not merely puppets controlled by your ego. They have their own motives, their own wisdom, and their own grievances. And when you invite them into a conscious conversation, extraordinary transformations can begin to happen. Let us look at how this plays out in real human lives. Imagine a man named David. David is in his mid-30s, successful in his career, but constantly plagued by a persistent, quiet sense of dread. Every time he is about to step into an important meeting or share his ideas, his chest tightens and a subtle voice whispers that he is a fraud, that he will eventually be exposed. For years, David tried positive thinking. He tried to argue with the voice, to suppress it, to overwhelm it with logical facts about his achievements. But the dread never vanished. It only grew stronger. One night, David dreams of a shadowy, imposing figure standing in the doorway of his childhood bedroom, blocking his path. Normally, David would wake up, feel uncomfortable, and forget about it, but decided to try active imagination. The next afternoon, in a quiet room with a notebook open on his desk, David closes his eyes. He breathes deeply, letting his body relax, but keeping his mind alert. He brings back the memory of the dream. He visualizes the doorway. He visualizes the shadowy figure standing there. Instead of running away or trying to change the image, David does something radical. He stays in the scene as his conscious self, and he speaks to the figure in his mind. He asks, "Who are you, and why are you standing in my way?" At first, nothing happens. This is normal. The unconscious requires patience. But after a few moments of quiet waiting, an answer forms. Not as a voice in the room, but as an intuitive inner response that David did not consciously plan. The figure answers, "I am not standing in your way to stop you. I am standing here to keep you from going out where it is unsafe." As the dialogue continues on the paper, David writes down both his own questions and the figure's spontaneous replies. He discovers that this scary, oppressive figure is actually a part of his psyche that froze in childhood, during a time when standing out or being visible resulted in harsh emotional criticism from his family. The shadow figure was not an enemy trying to ruin his career. It was an overprotective guardian operating on obsolete rules from 20 years ago. By engaging in active imagination, David did not destroy the fear. He transformed his relationship with it. He thanked the figure for protecting him in the past, explained that he was now an adult who could handle public exposure, and gave that inner part a new, less destructive role. Consider another situation that many people face: the experience of sudden, irrational emotional reactions. Imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah notices that whenever her partner asks her a harmless question about her schedule, she feels an explosive wave of resentment. Consciously, she loves her partner and knows the question is innocent, but internally, she feels trapped and cornered. Instead of taking her anger out on her partner, Sarah decides to take the feeling into active imagination. She sits comfortably, closes her eyes, and focuses entirely on the physical sensation of that resentment in her chest. She allows the feeling to take a form. Slowly, the feeling turns into an image, a heavy, rusty iron cage surrounding a small, desperate animal. Sarah stays grounded as the observer. She asks the animal, "Why are you so angry?" The response comes immediately, dripping with pain. "Because no one ever asks what I want. Everyone just takes my time, and you let them." Through this brief, active conversation, Sarah realizes that her explosive anger toward her partner had nothing to do with her partner at all. It was her own unconscious boundary system screaming for help. She had spent years pleasing everyone else, neglecting her own desires, and her inner self was suffocating inside that neglect. Active imagination brought a hidden truth into the light of consciousness, where Sarah could finally take realistic, healthy action in her external life. To truly understand how active imagination works, we must clearly distinguish it from other mental activities that seem similar on the surface. Many people ask, "Is this not just daydreaming?" The answer is no, and the difference is vital. In passive daydreaming, your conscious ego is completely captured by a fantasy. You sit there, imagining winning an award, defeating an opponent, or living in a luxurious house. In a daydream, the ego is either a passive spectator or a tyrant directing a self-serving film. There is no genuine interaction. You are simply entertaining yourself or escaping reality. In active imagination, the ego remains fully awake, critical, and present. You do not control what the inner figure says or does. You allow the unconscious to generate the character and its responses freely, while your conscious self acts as an active, equal participant in the conversation. You can argue with the figure. You can ask for clarification. You can set boundaries. If an inner figure demands something unreasonable or destructive, your conscious ego has the duty to say, "No, I will not do that in the real world, but let us figure out what you truly need." Active imagination is also different from traditional mindfulness meditation. In many forms of meditation, the goal is to observe thoughts as fleeting clouds, letting them pass without getting attached or engaging with them. You let the thoughts dissolve into silence. Active imagination takes the opposite approach. When an image or an intense emotion arises, you do not let it dissolve. You turn toward it. You grab a chair, sit down across from it, and initiate a conversation. This process requires a balance between two forces: opening the door to the unconscious and maintaining a solid, grounded ego. If you open the door without a strong ego, you risk being overwhelmed by heavy emotions or chaotic imagery. This is why Jung repeatedly warned that active imagination is not a game or a casual trick. It is a deep psychological tool. If a person is currently experiencing severe psychological instability, deep trauma, or psychosis, attempting to dive directly into the unguided unconscious without professional therapeutic support can be unsafe. The goal is always integration, not losing yourself in the fantasy. So how can you begin to practice active imagination safely and effectively in your own daily life? Jung outlined a process that can be translated into four practical steps that anyone can explore. The first step is to quiet the conscious mind and invite the image. Find a quiet, comfortable space where you will not be interrupted for 20 to 30 minutes. Turn off your phone. Sit comfortably with a notebook and pen nearby, or a blank document on your screen. Lower your physical tension. Take a few slow, deep breaths, letting go of the busy plans and worries of the day. Now, instead of trying to make your mind completely blank, invite an entry point. This entry point can be a lingering image from a recent dream that felt significant. It can be a strong, unexplained emotion you felt earlier today, such as a sudden lump in your throat or a knot in your stomach. Or it can be a persistent inner conflict you are facing. Focus your attention on this starting point. If it is an emotion, allow your mind to give it a visual form. Does it look like a person, an animal, a landscape, a shadow, a geometrical shape? Let the image solidify naturally, without forcing it to look like anything specific. The second step is to give the unconscious its freedom to speak. Once the image is present in your mind's eye, observe it with open curiosity. Notice its details, its posture, its expression, its surrounding atmosphere. Now, ask a simple, open-ended question. You might ask, "Who are you? Why have you appeared to me today? What is it that you want me to understand? What do you need from me?" After asking the question, step back and wait. This is where most people struggle because our conscious mind wants to control the answer or dismiss whatever pops up as ridiculous. Resist the urge to edit or judge. Allow the inner figure to speak, gesture, or act in whatever way it chooses. The response may come as inner words, a sudden shift in the character's appearance, an intuitive knowing, or a physical feeling. Do not censor anything. Let the scene unfold naturally. The third step is to record the dialogue in real time. As the conversation takes place, write it down immediately. Write it like a script for a play. Put your name or the letter E for ego on one line, followed by what you said. On the next line, write the name of the figure or symbol, followed by what it replied. Writing the dialogue down with your hand serves two crucial purposes. First, it anchors your conscious mind, keeping you awake, alert, and grounded in physical reality, so you do not drift off into passive daydreaming. Second, it creates an objective record of the psychological experience that you can reflect on later. Speak to the inner figure as you would speak to a real person standing in front of you. Be honest, be respectful, but do not be submissive. If the figure expresses anger or sadness, ask it why. If the figure makes a demand that seems confusing or extreme, challenge it calmly. Ask, what does this demand represent symbolically? What are you truly asking for in my inner life? Maintain a balanced, ethical stance throughout the interaction. The fourth and final step is crucial, and it is where many spiritual or psychological practices fail. The fourth step is ethical integration into real life. Jung stressed that active imagination is useless if it remains an abstract intellectual exercise or an entertaining mental show. The unconscious demands real integration. Once the dialogue has ended, close your eyes, thank the figure for the interaction, and gently return your full awareness to the physical room. Now look at what you wrote down on the paper. Read through the conversation objectively, as if you were reading a conversation between two external people. Ask yourself these reflection questions. What hidden truth or unrecognized need was revealed in this conversation? How has my conscious attitude been one-sided or unfair toward this part of myself? What is one small, practical step I can take in my daily, waking life to honor the insight I received today? If an inner figure representing creative energy told you that it feels suffocated because you work 14 hours a day and never allow time for play, the answer is not to quit your job tomorrow. The ethical integration is to schedule 30 minutes this week to draw, write, walk in nature, or engage in something purely creative without demanding productivity. You are showing your unconscious mind that its voice is heard, respected, and acted upon in physical reality. When you practice active imagination over time, subtle but profound changes begin to occur within your personality. The internal warfare between what you think you should be and what you actually feel starts to dissolve. The shadow, that vast realm of repressed emotions and disowned traits, ceases to be a terrifying monster lurking in the dark basement of your mind. It becomes a partner, a source of untapped energy, instinct, and creative power. You stop projecting your internal drama onto the outside world. You no longer blame your boss, your partner, or your circumstances for emotional reactions that actually belong to unexamined parts of your own psyche. You begin to realize that every dream figure that has ever haunted you, every recurring anxiety that has ever tightened your chest, and every creative urge that has ever stirred your heart is not an enemy to be conquered. They are messengers. They are fragments of your own soul, waiting for you to pull up a chair, sit down in the quiet, and finally ask, "What do you have to tell me?" Take a moment today to sit in stillness. Think of a dream, a feeling, or an inner tension that has been nudging at the edges of your awareness. Stop running from it. Stop distracting yourself. Open your notebook. Quiet your mind. Look into the dark forest of your inner world and invite the conversation to begin. Your whole self is waiting for you to answer.